Unexpected revelation.
Hey everyone, welcome to the live stream. It is February 16th, Monday. Happy Monday. I hope everybody had a good weekend. All right, so top stories today we're still dealing with the Democrats. They are pinning all their hopes and their strategy on obstructing the federal government with another shutdown. And if the last time they organized a shutdown was any indication at all of how it's going to work out, Trump's favorability actually went up during the last shutdown, and they kept trying to blame Trump for the shutdown. And everybody who even follows politics knew that, it wasn't Trump, it was the Democrats, and it's going to persist this time around as well. It's a limited government shutdown. But still, what we have going on here today is the fact that they keep pinning their hopes on an anti-ICE narrative, which has been moderately successful, but a majority of the electorate still wants all of the illegal immigrants in the country removed. And so the Trump administration says they're targeting the worst of the worst. And of course, when you surge agents into an area that is antagonistic towards their presence, you're going to have problems like you did in Minnesota. So there was a drawdown. I was going to play the interview from Tom Homan on Face the Nation, but he just said basically the same thing, is that they're not going to relent and there's going to maintain a presence there. And the reason that there is the drawdown to begin with is the state and municipal governments are going to, or promise to, work with ICE as far as retainers are concerned. All right, so let's get into the news. We'll read the headlines for today, February 16th. We're going to start with word of the day, wrangle. So the Democrats are wrangling, which is to dispute angrily or peevishly, I would say peevishly, to engage in argument or controversy, but specifically is a transitive verb to obtain by persistent arguing or maneuvering. Now, this is exactly what the Democrats are doing. They're wrangling. Also as a noun, an angry, noisy, or prolonged dispute or quarrel. And that describes the postmodernists in the street in the color revolution. A lot of them don't even understand the policy. They're just out there protesting. So we're going to start with today's... we're going to start today a little bit with the Democrats who were in Germany, Berlin, I believe, for the security conference there. Now, what you did have is a bunch of presidential wannabes, Gavin Newsom, AOC, Hillary Clinton, that were there, and they said the same old shit. Hillary came off the most polished, so I'm going to deal with her. The others, just like Gavin Newsom did at Davos, sounded like a buffoon. They don't have international chops like you might suspect from the current president. So let's look at this PJ Media article. Hillary script interrupted. Hillary Clinton, a former all-star American leader, took the stage in Munich expecting a stroll on familiar ground. The setting felt friendly, the crowd leaned globalist, and the talking points seemed well rehearsed. Then a Czech politician calmly stepped outside the approved script, asked a question that didn't flatter the room. Czech Deputy Prime Minister Peter Makinta challenged, it's actually Petra, I believe it's a woman, challenged prevailing narratives on sovereignty, migration, and Western leadership. He spoke, he didn't shout, he didn't posture, he simply disagreed. Now I'm going to go to the video here in just a second. Clinton wasn't the only Democrat in Munich, as I said, struggling with optics. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Governor Gavin Newsom also faced criticism during their appearances. Both tried to present themselves as seasoned global leaders, but drew scrutiny for remarks that appeared tone-deaf and disconnected from global realities and global elites. But not only that, their talking points for the domestic audience, which, you know, Americans are pretty stupid, usually ring resoundingly, but not with people, especially people when you're dealing with this sort of crowd. This is an intelligence crowd, a security crowd, and the intelligence crowd are the most sophisticated thinkers out there. So let's see if we can't go to this video here of Hillary Clinton being asked. In the article, it said he, but this question is from a she, and I hope it is related here.
Clinton, so thank you for that. And you got.
You really mean that?
Yes, I do. I do, and you got several rounds of applause there. But I'm really interested in the line that our discussion is having already, which is a battle within the West between conservatism and liberalism. But I don't think we would be having this discussion at all if it weren't for some of the positions the US administration has taken. And let me take one of them, which is Ukraine, which is obviously at the center of the Munich discussions of the past couple of years. And the line that the Trump administration has taken in trying to resolve the Ukraine conflict following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and its apparent thrust to accept Russia's.
All right, apparently that wasn't related. Let's see if I can't find the actual clip here. Here it is. Is this? Yeah, I think I found it here.
First, I think you really don't like him.
You know, that is absolutely true, but
First, I think you really don't like him.
You know, that is absolutely true, but I really, not only do I not like him, I don't like him because of what he's doing to the United States and the world, and I think you should take a hard look at it if you think that there is something good that will come out of it.
Peter.
What I think Trump is doing in America, I think it is reaction for something that, for some policies that really went too far from the regular people, too far from reality. So, you know, we saw the cancel culture. We saw the woke revolution. I don't agree with the gender revolution, the climate alarmism.
Which gender? Women having their rights?
No, let Peter go on.
I think there are two genders. So, but some of
us
think that there is more than one or more than two gender. I think there is male and female, and the rest probably is a social construct. So this is something that went too far.
But does that justify selling out the people of Ukraine who are on the front lines dying to save their freedom and their two genders, if that's what you're worried about?
Can I please finish my points? I'm sorry that it makes you nervous. I'm really sorry for that.
It makes me nervous. It makes me
but seriously, can we let Peter finish, please? Can we let Peter finish, please?
I have to say one more thing. You said that Ukraine fights for our future and for our freedom. I think first Ukraine fights for Ukraine's future, Ukraine's freedom, and Ukraine's sovereignty and independence. So we should help them, of course, but what I see on some people in the West, they are trying to help the Ukraine. But that's another question. I don't know if Trump's administration is helping the Ukraine to stop the war. I believe that there is such an approach. I don't see any other strong geopolitical player who would be able to force Russia to stop killing the Ukrainian people and stop destroying their country. I don't see. Maybe China, but China makes nothing. I don't know if the pressure, if Trump is forcing Russia in the way that they will stop the war. I don't know. I only see that the only Americans right at the moment can make it. I see the dialogue.
Do you think Europe could put more pressure on Russia, for example, by putting pressure on Turkey, by targeting the refineries of oil more, and so on?
I think.
All right, I'm just going to leave it there for now. I didn't pre-watch the clip, so I didn't know for sure if that was happening. And obviously, when I queued up the clip with the moderator, I thought they were going to go right to that guy, not go into this whole thing about Ukraine. But you obviously saw that Hillary Clinton was put back on her heels there by somebody who believes in what is happening in the United States, this pushback against this radical postmodern agenda, which is really screwing up life considerably and taking our eyes off the ball with concerns of AI, which I don't agree with Trump on. So moving back to the articles here, I'm going to go back to Just the News, where Colorado Senate panel reviews firearm barrels bill. Now, this is true to my heart here. The Colorado Senate State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee considered a bill Thursday to require firearm barrel purchases to be made in person by licensed dealers. Now, this is problematic because if you like certain types of barrels, like I do, stainless steel barrels and whatnot, you might want to order one from somewhere else. Now, if you order one from inside Colorado, you'd actually have to go there and purchase it. And a firearm barrel is a piece of a gun. It's not the gun. What got us into this thing in the first place was the fact that they're talking about digital printers and whether the printers can print parts of guns. They can make plastic guns, but the barrel itself has to be steel. And so that is, again, the weak link that Democrats are targeting, just like they tried to target ammo previously, that now they're trying to target gun barrels, which is not a gun, does not a gun make. It is just the only thing that can't really be printed out of plastic. Through those 3D printers. You can't, if you know anything that goes into making a gun barrel, it's very technical, sophisticated lathe work. Okay, so obviously we have a problem with that because that is obviously against the Second Amendment. You're allowed to keep and bear arms, and you're not going to be able to keep and bear arms if they can't make them. And if they can't make them if they don't have access to barrels, which is a part of a gun, is not a gun. Doesn't a gun make. It's just a barrel. It's a part. And so the gun control advocates have been having a hard time trying to police gun parts, because then you could put together a gun yourself, and they hate that because gun parts aren't a gun. They make a gun, and you can make a gun out of gun parts, but it's not a gun. So they try to control firearms by controlling the parts and ammunition, et cetera, et cetera. All right, moving on to another Just the News article here. A liberal network leader's wife, Code Pink leader, promote Red China trips for Americans. Now, you might have heard about Singham and the network there. The guy's wife leads this Code Pink, which is another NGO that gets all sorts of liberal funding. And what they do is they're socialist, communist, and they're aligning against the United States because the United States is so evil for daring to want to produce freedom and liberties, protect them, the God-given liberties that people are supposed to enjoy. God forbid we have that worldwide. Why not support the adversaries of the United States that don't care for freedom or liberties? You know, to me, it just doesn't make any sense. They sell communist China like it's just like any other country, and every country has human rights and you could behave the way you want. That's just not true. Americans don't really realize what little rights you have outside of the United States. Getting into the story here, though, the China Community Trip Interest meeting was held by Code Pink in late January. The trips promoted by Code Pink include praise of the communist revolution in China, of the socialist economic system imposed upon China, and the CCP military leaders, and eventually Chinese dictator Mao Zedong, famous or infamous Long March, in their view, saved the CCP from destruction and allowed the communists to rebuild and eventually conquer China. None of this should be praised, by the way. The communists killed like 92 million. I mean, that's just an estimate of their own people trying to force in the Long March and the communist revolution, etc. If you look at the history of communist China, it's appalling. It's appalling that, and even what China did in Tibet, etc. Where's Richard Gere now when you need him? Free Tibet. But everybody has just realized that the elite have planned for the synthesis with our adversary, communist China. It's going to be like socialist light, sort of, but mostly to benefit corporations, which, by the way, communism benefits corporations. If you think that somehow communism puts a stranglehold on corporations, it just doesn't. I mean, some industries in communist countries have been nationalized, but if you own 51% of a company, technically it's nationalized. If the central government does, you know, it just, to me, it's just so bizarre. And I'm not a fan of corporations. However, I don't believe nationalizing a corporation is the right idea. It doesn't really, socialism doesn't work fiscally in China or anywhere else. They have to manipulate their currency and do all these things to try to make it work. And actually, they're losing now because of the tariffs and everything. But I don't want to digress too much. Let's just go on to the next article from Mediaite. Pelosi warns of Trump surveillance ahead of midterms. It's not right. What does this even mean? Nancy Pelosi, Democrat of California, still, people thought this because she left the leadership post that she was no longer representative. She is. Warned MS Now about surveillance by the intelligence operation, whatever that means, ahead of the midterm elections, telling Democrats to not put anything past President Trump. What does that mean? We don't really know. Pelosi joined MS Now's the weekend on Saturday from Munich, where she's attending the annual Munich Security Conference. Again, what is she doing in Munich on the security conference? Does people know what security is? Yeah, security is intelligence, and intelligence, military and otherwise, on trying to prevent the New World Order from being sidelined and dismantled by populist conservatives around the globe, President Trump included. Goes on to say, she said she has been assuring European leaders at a conference that she has absolute certainty Democrats will take control of the House of Representatives, despite her many concerns about the elections. Really, the reasoning being is because they know that the Democrats are going to cheat because they have to. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Pelosi said she is alarmed by the involvement of Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard in the FBI raid on the polling stations in Fulton County. And then she goes on to say, I hear that all over the United States, not just in Europe, that there's a concern about the election. This is what they're setting up if they lose. Donald Trump is ensuring and the federal government is ensuring election integrity, which is just the opposite of what she claims it to be. She's election integrity efforts are a way to cheat, which is just the opposite. It removes avenues of fraud. Surveillance in our own country is something that is absolutely not to be allowed. What does that even mean? Let me just say that surveillance by intelligence operation of our country, whatever that means, is not to be allowed. And now, if there's some particular reason I think she's lost it. There's one thing, but for Tulsi to be looking at elections is really not right. I don't even know what that means. It's not lawful, it's not right, but that doesn't seem to even bother the president. But you know what? We don't agonize, we organize, and we have litigation. We have lawyering in terms of addition to the courts, but polling places and the rest, we have legislation. I don't even know what that means. You can't surveil the elections? What does that even mean? You can't monitor the elections. Of course you can. Because if you're trying to keep them from being fraudulent, of course you have to surveil. And that's what they did last time. They had teams of lawyers at all the polling stations in the swing states making sure that these trucks didn't roll up, and they did roll up, and dispense hundreds of thousands of ballots. So Pelosi also vowed that Democrats will fight voter ID requirements, even though their constituents want it, which the president has promised will be in effect for the midterms. The House recently passed the SAVE Act that would require ID to vote, with one Democrat joining Republicans. It now faces an uphill battle to pass the Senate. It does because of the filibuster. And we went over this many, many times before. Moving on with the news, though. Biden area EV boondoggle continues to plague automakers as they realign to customer demand. If you didn't know, people within the United States don't like EV. The majority of people in the United States don't want electric vehicles. And that is something certainly that needs to be considered when pushing, like Biden did, the boondoggle. And we know where all the money went. I mean, he spent $16 billion on 12 charging stations across the country. It's not a boondoggle, it's a grift. I mean, people could call it a boondoggle, but we don't know where the money went. A lot of the money that went to the EPA, according to the director there, didn't have any place to go. It was just sitting in an account. It was allocated, I guess, for something. Money was approved, but it didn't go anywhere, which means it just wasn't stolen, which obviously is good as well. But all right, let's move on. I had to do something really quick there. We have a Reuters headline. Courts have ruled 4,400 times that ICE jailed people illegally. It hasn't stopped. So this brings me to, and I don't want to belabor this as well, that there are two kinds of warrants. I should have brought up the legal clarity article here. There are two kinds of warrants. You would say judicial and administrative, no. Arrest and search warrant, all right? The Democrats on the talking head circuit kept talking about warrants in terms of the Fourth Amendment, which makes it unconstitutional for, illegal, unwarranted search and seizure, in your effects and your papers and what have you. Not what we're talking about here. Not the fucking Fourth Amendment. It's arrest warrants. So, if you're an illegal immigrant, you don't need an arrest warrant. Are you here legally? Oh, okay. We'll just need you to prove that. You can't prove it, then you're deported. That's the way it works. Now, they are requesting a arrest warrant to enter people's houses. So if there's an illegal immigrant inside his house, you need an arrest warrant to breach the door and go in there and get him. Whether that's administered, and there is some dubious concern whether that's even needed or not. That's why they're given administrative warrants, because of the nature of illegal aliens and their removal. The law, the removal isn't like arresting a normal person. If you're here illegally, you get removed. That's it. If you're suspected of being an illegal immigrant, you could be detained and questioned, etc. Whether you need an administrative warrant or a warrant at all is something completely different. Now, if you want to go into somebody's home, you might need a warrant to do so, administrative or otherwise. And all the warrant does is say you can arrest this person, and you could do a rudimentary search, not an extensive search, to make sure that there are no weapons and what have you, where the guy is. I read the Reuters article. It was a bunch of bullshit. No wonder they're still doing it, is because there's no legal basis for saying that people are detained illegally. They're not detained illegally. If they are in this country illegally or came under the Joe Biden administration and were promised asylum or whatever, which isn't realistic. Like I said, 9 out of 10 people are rejected for asylum claims. And so giving everybody who crosses the border an asylum hearing is unfounded. There's no basis for asylum. They just said, come to the border and claim asylum. And that's not the proper way to claim asylum either. You're supposed to go to the U.S. Embassy in your country and claim asylum. Or do it at a point of entry, but even the latter is, you can't just show up at a point of entry and go, I claim asylum. It doesn't work that way. Just the news, 27 members of Trendaragua splinter faction members charged in New York. Those charged, all illegally in the U.S., plan to carry out a series of horrific crimes, including gunpoint robberies, murders, and the exploitation of vulnerable young women through sex trafficking. Trendaragua is the business of murder, sex trafficking, and intimidation. They brought that business to New York. While being unlawfully present in the United States, those charged exerted ruthless control over sex trafficking victims, most of whom are also illegal immigrants, through intimidation, brutality, and threats of violence against them and their loved ones, leaving lasting trauma in their wake. And what people also have to understand about immigrant community is that a lot of times they feel, and if you're here illegally, you can't rely on law enforcement, and so you're easily exploited. And that happens with the illegal immigrant community that's here now. You have illegal gang members. Trendaragua is a prison gang, and they come into the United States and they prey on the people that can't go to law enforcement. The same way the Cosa Nostra started with the Italians. Even though the Italians were here legally for the most part, they felt they couldn't rely on law enforcement. Post-millennial, federal grand jury indicts Oregon mom and daughter accused of trafficking Haitians, forcing them into labor on new healthcare fraud charges. Maureen Gertrude Jean Valmart, 67, and Yolandita Marie Andre, 31, have each been charged with 12 counts of conspiracy to commit healthcare fraud and forced labor. So again, illegal immigrants being taken advantage of, this time by American citizens, who apparently were also immigrants of Haiti. According, it looks like, because of their names, they're French in origin, so, etc. Also from the post-millennial, Washington father confronts school board over child's participation in anti-ICE walkout without his knowledge. He says, I wasn't given notice. Vance Glaw criticized members of the Highline School Board on Wednesday after hundreds of students took part in a February 2nd walkout. Glaw said he had to go to the protest himself to remove his 7th grade son from the event. Law also accused the board of violating state law by allowing students to leave campus without notifying parents. Indeed, none of this was legal. It's sort of like what they did during COVID. Most of the legislators of the state changed the voting laws illegally. And they instituted this. They all knew about mail-in ballots, and so they all instituted mail-in ballots. And it's the same here. Democrats flaunt the law continuously. It's the same thing with immigration law. They know what the immigration law is, and then they conflate the issue by calling illegal immigrants immigrants and saying the Republicans are targeting immigrants, not illegal immigrants. And so for most people, they just confuse the situation with that, which of course shouldn't be done. PJ Media, another headline here: university requires equity and inclusion course despite federal guidelines. This is article number 10. Drake University still requires equity and inclusion coursework despite receiving federal funding, even though the Trump administration has banned DEI initiatives at universities that accept taxpayer money. All students at Drake University are required to complete coursework addressing topics such as race, gender, class, LGBTQ plus status, and other identity-based social and political categories. These include such unpromising courses as perspectives in race, ethnicity, and gender, transitional justice, gender and war, LGBTQ health issues, and psychology of prejudice. Shouldn't have to take that. Unless, I mean, if you're getting a degree in whatever, women's studies or what, maybe, but that shouldn't be required. It's just more brainwashing as far as I'm concerned. Social, I talked about this yesterday too, is social having huge problems. Weird. I have windows that just disappear. I don't know why. Yep, I don't know. That's why. All right, back to the headlines. Like I said, I was going to have this clip of Tom Homan on Face the Nation. Washington Times, Trump border czar says small security force will remain in Minnesota after enforcement drawdown. So you know what the administration is doing here. They're defagging the political might of what was happening in Minnesota. And they should have done this early on, but they didn't. But the point is, ICE has presence in every state. And they should surge forces where forces are needed, but they should do it strategically and for short periods of time. I was going to air his comments. I mean, they're worth watching, but he didn't add anything new. We're going to pursue all illegal immigrants. Obviously, we're going to target the dangerous criminal people. It's not 14%, by the way. That's there are criminal elements that are here illegally that may or may not have been convicted of crimes in the United States, but they're criminals, either from their other country or they haven't been convicted in this country. And so that's how they came up with that 14%. It's more like 60. And it doesn't matter that everyone that's here illegally should be deported. I mean, that might sound mean to you, but that's the law. So fix the law. You can't fix the law. All right, well, then the law is the law. Are we a nation of laws or we're not a nation of laws? And that's the whole thing is people don't understand. They want the law to apply to this, but not to that. That inconsistent application of the law has no place in the United States. Post-millennial Illinois anti-ICE students assault, throw rocks at Trump supporter in the street. This is just what I was talking about here. Man was seen unfurling a Trump flag and saying, "Make America Great Again," prompting activists in the crowd to begin throwing rocks, water bottles, and shoes at him. No wonder there was the Proud Boys because of shit like this. If protesters can't handle counter-protesting, then they shouldn't be protesting. There's one guy against hundreds, and you have to attack him. The same right that allows you to go and protest allows him to protest as well. Was it wise for him? I tell people to do that all the time. Go support ICE, protest ICE. Just make sure you film them and be there with a partner. You should never go do something alone. Doesn't matter what you do. It's the buddy system. Because the man was struck and kicked multiple times. After several minutes, volunteers helped him escape into a nearby bank. What the fuck is going on in America? The problem is you insist on something, and then when somebody else insists on the same thing, you don't want it for them. It's Maoism. You go beat up the people that you don't agree with. They're just unlearned, you know. The people there in the street, they don't know how precious their liberties are and how excluding somebody else's liberty, that your rights stop where my rights begin. So they should have just ignored the guy. I hope those people go to jail for assault. Because they had hundreds of people. They obviously drowned him out, but they're so incensed that MAGA and the brainwashing has worked. They're so incensed that MAGA that they, you know, they've created political street thugs for some time. And this is all done on purpose. This isn't some unforeseen circumstances, unforeseen result of the constant demonization of Trump, etc. New York Times, Epstein ties with academics show seedy side of college fundraising. Professors and presidents are often eager to raise outside cash. Some are now facing blowback after connecting with Jeffrey Epstein. People don't understand what is going on in elite circles. Now, we talk about the elite all the time, but you have to understand, and this is where the real fascism comes in. They're different power blocks, right? They're different centers or pillars of power. There's academia, you know, which is part of science. There's state government, federal government, corporations, blah, blah, blah. They're really only the big ones only left are academia, science, the federal government in America, and corporations. And so the connection of all those three to suppress your rights is called fascism. But Trump is working against universities and against corporations. So it's not fascism. The fascism was Joe Biden, federal government, working with corporations and academia to brainwash you and to give you a world that you didn't really vote for or want, including one where everyone drives an electric car. Okay. Moving on with the story, though, many academics whose names appear within the Epstein files say that they turned to him only because of his money and the possibility that he could underwrite college budgets and research efforts, even if their exchanges came after Mr. Epstein pleaded guilty in 2008 to soliciting prostitution from a minor. As I said for years, engaging with Jeffrey Epstein was in the service of one agenda, which was fundraising for Bard, the Bard college president said. Doesn't matter. It's the same thing when you, like, if you're a landlord and you want to get a tenant into your house, you look into their background because you don't want any criminals there. The same instance for colleges, if somebody's reputation has been sullied by some egregious and heinous acts, then you don't want their money. Blood money, so to speak, here. The blood of innocents. Mr. Epstein's motives for connecting with college professors and presidents were not always clear. I know why. He gathered celebrities and power brokers into his network. A Harvard professor who benefited from the Epstein largesse once noted that the financier also collected scientists. Yeah. Control, not collected. Control. Control, because it was just about, like all the elites are concerned with, is intelligence. Not intelligence of your mind, data. So he blackmailed people to get data. He bribed people to get data because who wanted the data? Not just Epstein, but his controllers, like Lex Wexner. Epstein rarely followed through with his multi-million-dollar contributions he suggested were an offer, but he drew people in and appeared attentive to academia's unending quest to pay its bills. And the New York Times is just providing cover for this. Like I said, he wanted access to intelligence, to data. What all these scientists, what they were working out, what the outcomes of their experiments were. And usually those are closely guarded secrets, especially if they're underwritten by pharmaceutical companies, etc. But it's already been proven in what's going on in the UK that he forced people to fork over classified information. Either, if it's classified by a government, it has stronger repercussions than if, let's say, the privacy policy of a university or so forth. There's no real law enforcement that comes after you leak information from a college, right? But colleges were doing it. They were sending biological samples. They were allowing them to be smuggled out by China, et cetera, and they were openly giving classified information out. That was, like I said, if it's underwritten by somebody else, they technically own it. New York Post, Australian activist says Billie Eilish got me deported for his LA mansion stunt after singer's ice rant. So this guy was Drew Pavlou. I guess he's an Australian. And he posted on X, I've decided to move into Billie Eilish's $6 million Malibu beachfront mansion because no human being is illegal on stolen land. Thank you, Billie, for your generosity. It's a joke. There he is. They had a file on him. Her lawyers seem to have actually compiled a dossier on me because the agents were asking me about my entire history as an activist opposed to the Chinese government, whether I had ever plotted to assassinate Chinese Communist Party officials. It was legitimately insane. How did you get to that from posting about Billie Eilish's mansion as a joke, wanting to occupy it? How do you get to Chinese communists? Very, very strange. Other article here from the New York Times about Facebook warriors. A Facebook warrior retreats after Charlie Kirk post got him jailed. Larry Bushar, 61-year-old retired police officer, he should know better, would somewhat jokingly describe himself as a warrior. His weapon was a keyboard and the trenches were Facebook. He would spend hours posting political memes and jumping into comment threads. Of course he would. The victory he sought was sweet satisfaction that came from believing he had debated his adversaries into a corner. Debate me, motherfucker. If they had lashed out using talking points that he considered misinformed. So he thought he would win if he considered their points misinformed. So what he did, after all, was he was the only person hauled off by police officers. That's not true. Charged with a felony and jailed on $2 million bail after weighing in on Mr. Kirk's assassination. The sheriff in the county near his home said that the meme Mr. Bushcart had Bushhart, excuse me, had reposted, and it was a repost on a community Facebook page, could be perceived as a violent threat. I'm not here to litigate that. I think you should be able to post that sort of shit. It's really, there's some people posting on there to shoot people and have the ability to do so. Those should be considered seriously. But my issue was, and the New York Times defends this guy, is that he did something that was in bad taste. And then he argues with people that he considers misinformed. Charlie Kirk was a victim of a political assassination that was goaded and nurtured by left-wing talking points for the past decade. Anti-Trump stuff. And so an pro-trans, whatever you want to call it, it all comes from the left. It's the vitriol of the left that caused the death of Charlie Kirk. Now, this guy didn't realize that? No, because he was part of the vitriol that said he would feel victorious if he considered what someone else was talking about was misinformed. The left is probably the most misinformed, the current political left, the most misinformed political group that I've ever seen. They're postmodernists, so they believe in the tenet of postmodernism is subjective thinking, which means your truth. If you believe something in your heart of hearts, then it's true to you. And so anything that criticizes that way of thinking, obviously, which is adversarial to your way of thinking, is wrong and misinformed. These people are lunatics. They should go back to school or see a psychologist or do something. And then the New York Times goes on to say it was after 2020, there was the pandemic, the gusher of disinformation. Disinformation is a tool of intelligence agencies, not of ordinary people, that accompanied it, like ivermectin works, and that many ways it became politicized. There was also the police killing of George Floyd. The police did not kill him, but the New York Times is still saying so. And racial justice protests that followed because they were misinformed or more likely disinformed. He was like a lot of Americans back then, cooped up, frustrated, confused, certainly confused, and eager to vent. So actually what he posted was he was deeply affected. He was perplexed how so many people were deeply affected by the death of Charlie Kirk. Fucking ridiculous. Of course, guy was publicly shot, assassinated. And all he did is speak about Christ and conservatism. And that got him killed because he didn't believe in more than two genders. Now, he said, I'm not going to call Charlie a bad person, but I thought what made him worthy of all that sentiment. And then he went on and quoted something from something else in Perry, Iowa. So they drew a correlation between Perry, Iowa, the school shooting there, and Perry, Tennessee. And then he posted something. This seems relevant. Look at this. And this is the New York Times. Never, ever, ever. This seems relevant today, ampersand, which is the three dots. You never put an ampersand in a quote because that means you're taking the quote out of context. And apparently it said something worse after that. I don't think this guy should be jailed, but if someone else went to federal prison for posting that if you're a Democrat, you could vote on Tuesday, he went to prison, then maybe this guy should go to prison. I don't really believe that. I think you should have free speech. But I have a problem with the talking points on the left aren't rational and they're not reasonable. And as I said before, they steamroll everyone else's rights by pushing, bulldozing their rights. Other people get marginalized by their fight to be unmarginalized or whatever. Like those protests, anti-ICE protesters going after that one guy with a Trump flag. That is literally an analogy. If you get to do it, then other people get to do it, even if you don't agree with them. Next article up here. You ought to be in jail. Senator unloads on Minnesota AG Ellison after fraud scandal. You might have seen this. Josh Hawley went after Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison, who's an idiot and a moron and not a good debater. And they went at it, which was kind of entertaining. But the problem is what gets lost here is Keith Ellison failed to investigate many fraud crimes after they were brought to his attention through whistleblowers, etc. Then the whistleblowers came out and said, we brought this to the attention of the Attorney General and he's ignored it. And that's what they were asking him about. So the whole substance gets lost there. Speaking of getting lost, the post-millennial Silence of the Lambs actor apologizes to transgender people for unfortunate depiction of Buffalo Bill during the Silence of the Lambs movie. Actor Ted Levine and producer Edward Saxton recently addressed criticism that the character Buffalo Bill perpetuated harmful stereotypes against trans people. You mean that trans people are insane and they go on killing sprees? Recently in the news, I forget what channel it was. It was one of the mainstream news things. I think it was over the weekend. I should put it on. CBS. I forget which segment it was. Oh, right. It was a segment. They re-aired a segment about school shooters, about a photographer that goes to the victims' rooms of school shooters and he photographs them because the parents left those rooms the way they were when the kid left them before they died. Okay, that's fine enough. But the lead-in, which I should have played today, the lead-in talked about the most recent school shooting in Canada where weapons are, firearms are strictly regulated. There was a school shooter. The guy was a trans maniac. You can read up on him. And the father even said he never took my name, stopped using my name, that he was really disturbed. He had death fetishes, and again, showed all the signs that he was going to get into trouble by he was fantasizing and venerating school shooters and fantasizing about committing school shootings. But they didn't even mention in the CBS segment. They just said, oh, there's another school shooting. They didn't mention that the kid was trans, that this is like the third one in a row. So I hate to break it to you, Ted Levine and Edward Saxon. Gender dysphoria is a mental illness. And if these people are depressed for one reason or another, they feel they're trapped in the wrong body or whatever, do not give them psychotic medication like antidepressant medication that has black box warnings that says may cause suicidal or homicidal ideation. And I know parents want to help their kids, but, you know, if you're going to engage in, gender affirming care, give them the hormones that align with their prescribed, aligned with their gender of birth. Otherwise, it's gender rejecting. It's not gender affirming. Because I'm not saying that there isn't some chemical issue going on there with people that feel that they're transgender. Daily Mail, Savannah Guthrie is considering leaving Today Show for good amid hellish search for missing mom Nancy. This is story number 18. Again, I'm just going to reiterate my 2 cents here. As far as Nancy Guthrie goes, I wouldn't be surprised if she left the Today Show and that she will go on reinserting this story to the top of the news, at least for the next month or so until the Clintons have testified. I don't believe that this was a kidnapping. This was a disappearance on purpose, and it's supposed to be, characterized as a kidnapping. It wasn't a kidnapping. I don't think shit was a kidnapping. I hope she's alive. I don't think she's alive. I think this was done by professionals. People say, oh, the guy was a moron. I don't know if he was a moron. Amateurs make mistakes. Professionals don't make mistakes. It doesn't matter how he carries his gun or whether he decided to use vegetation to try to obscure the camera. He might have done that plenty of times before and it worked. Who knows? He eventually removed the camera. He didn't seem too worried about the camera, and he wasn't an idiot because he hid it. He made a very good attempt at hiding his face from the camera. There was only a couple moments where you could isolate the footage and see a part of his face, and he knew he was wearing, obviously, a mask. And I believe he had accomplices, and I believe Nancy Guthrie is probably somewhere in the Mexican desert or nearby. They did not cross the border at a normal point of crossing, normal border crossing. They probably smuggled her body into Mexico. Hard to say. But this is, as I said again, an effort to distract people from, I think, particularly the Epstein files, and most particularly the Clintons' testimony. You know anything about the Clintons, they have a way of just hurting people when they feel folks are getting too close to their reality. New York Post: Israeli producer of Apple TV spy thriller Tehran found dead in an Athens hotel. Oh, that's not espionage, right? Dana Eden, producer behind the hit Israeli show Tehran, has been found dead in the Athens hotel room, according to Greek cops. 52-year-old was found dead on Sunday. Police are probing her death as a suicide. Of course it's a suicide. It's like Jeffrey Epstein. Eden was found with bruises on her neck and the lower parts of her body. That obviously points to suicide. The production company wants to make clear that the rumors of her death being criminal or nationalistic are not true and baseless. I disagree. I think definitely she was killed more than likely by Iranian assassins. But maybe she learned something else. Maybe she learned something else about Mossad or Israel, and maybe she was going to put it into a show. Maybe she wrote a script or approved a script of the new show that certain intelligence networks didn't like, and so she was killed. Someone doing a high-profile media operation like that just ends up dead in a hotel room. I mean, come on. Yeah, and Anthony Bourdain killed himself also. I just want to go back to, I was seeing this. If you look here and explore more in the New York Post, the center story, Canada trans shooter's mom described him as a sadistic, as twisted addiction to death videos revealed. Yeah. So was Buffalo Bill, I guess, was sadistic, right? Anyway. All right, moving on. The New York Post: Trump opposes AI safety bill in Utah after administration's one rule book policy. This is the big disagreement I have with Trump. I understand why he's doing it. It's a national security issue. So I excuse him for it, but I am no proponent of AI. It's going to be the downfall of humanity. And have fun in the meantime, but that's the reality. It's part of the New World Order, and that's why we need to have UBI and socialism is to control the masses when they don't have any work to do. It's not like people are going to be able to live out their dreams. I want to be a ballerina. The robots can dance better. I think there's going to be somewhat of a blowback. I think it should be stronger. Certainly. Force kind of a Luddite revolution. All right. Yeah, we're at 11 o'clock, so let's finish it up. From the opinion pages, Ross Douthat on the New York Times, how fast can AI change the workplace? He goes into the same article that I went to, an online essay from Matt Schumer, something big is happening, and that everybody should read it and know. And he said, except this time, instead of a virus, the agent, because he compared it to COVID-2, the agent of the transformation is a technology increasingly capable of replacing white-collar workers en masse. And it's going to replace all workers. I mean, once humanoid robots come into the fore. But it's the same thing with COVID-19 was orchestrated. COVID-2 was orchestrated. It's part of the New World Order. It was a test, a beta test for a much more serious outbreak. And there are going to be many more tests with AI, with robotics, and with pathogens. Because that's the way they're going to commit the culling once they don't need people anymore. It's just going to be first the robots, and then people are going to push back against the robots, and then there's going to be a pandemic, and everybody's going to die. Most people. And at that point, it could be targeted genetically. It's be like, it's everybody's susceptible, when realistically they'll know everyone is not susceptible. Why aren't all the rich people dying? Maybe the COVID vaccination has something to do with that. We'll see. New York Times again from the opinion pages. Anthropic's chief on AI. We don't know if the models are conscious. Dario Amodei shares his utopian and dystopian predictions in the near term for artificial intelligence. Not good. And one more from the New York Times. Why an AI video of Tom Cruise battling Brad Pitt spooked Hollywood. The 15-second clip created by artificial intelligence tool owned by a Chinese technology company, ByteDance, appears more cinematic than anything so far. We're on the verge here. People don't even notice. That's why it's like something happened in 2012 and nobody was really sure what it was. And I think it was the genetic breakthrough of CRISPR being able to manipulate genetics so easily. And then everything seemed to change. And now we're on another cusp here and things are about to get really weird. And so I'm just going to leave you today, I think, with this video of Tom Cruise battling Brad Pitt. So there was a 15-second clip, and what worried Hollywood was the fact that those the cinematography, the moving camera and everything, it really showed how advanced AI film creation, cinema creation can be. I should have included the end of the video where Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt kill themselves, and that we'll never have to witness them in movies again. No, I'm just kidding. I like Tom Cruise to some degree, but we're going to leave it there for today. Thanks very much for joining me. Don't forget to engage the channel, like, subscribe, leave a comment, share the live stream. Have some technical difficulties on X. Don't forget you're under attack psychologically, biologically. Stay hip to the trick. See you tomorrow. Respect.
The New World Order. The New World Order.
This is all a conspiracy. No, no, that is a conspiracy.
You can't handle the truth. Less than 3% of you people